Hey, it's Chad back with you again. Welcome into another episode of A Level Deeper. Before we jump into today's conversation, I just want to take a moment. I think it's important that you take a moment to give yourself a little pat on the back. Maybe clap for yourself a little bit. You are here listening to a podcast that is called A Level Deeper. Whether you've listened before or this is your first time listening, I think you grasp the idea that you would like to go a level deeper into this human experience, into this thing that we call life. And I think that's awesome. I think it's really meaningful to explore who we are as human beings, to hear other people's stories. And so I just want to take a moment to applaud you for being here with me. And, I hope you take a second to applaud yourself and be proud of yourself for being willing to go a level deeper, be willing to explore, and be willing to be open to a new story and a new perspective. And so today, you and I get the opportunity to listen to a story and perspective from my guest, Kendra Neal. Kendra is actually someone that my wife, Eileen, and I have known for over 10 years now. She went to high school with Eileen, and so Kendra is from the same small town in Michigan that I am from, and my wife. And so in this episode, you'll hear a little bit of us talking back to those days, but it's been so meaningful and fun watching Kendra over the last 10 plus years on this journey that she's been on. And as she says, she's taken a very different path in life. We grew up in a town where it was very expected that you're going to go through high school and then you're going to go off to college and then you're going to start your first job. And she decided to do something different. From an early age, Kendra knew that she had a passion around art and around beauty, and that brought her to combine those two things together. And it started with doing nails and hair for girls in high school, and that has grown to today be a permanent makeup business that has multiple locations across 2 different states, a handful of team members at this point. And it's been really rewarding seeing Kendra, and now with her husband, Shane, build this business and getting a front row seat as to how they've been doing it and the decisions that they've have to make and the ways that they have grown and Kendra has grown as an individual, which she's going to talk about a lot in this conversation. We touch on all kinds of fun topics like what to do if maybe your family or some of your friends aren't supporting you in your art or the different path that you might want to take in life. We have a really good conversation around sacrifices. And we talk about the sacrifices that Kendra has had to make in order to get her business and her professional life to where they are now. And I ask her the question, do you think it's worth it? We have a really relatable discussion about burnout and striving for balance in life. And so if that's something that you found yourself struggling with, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you work a full-time job, whether you don't work at all, but if you are someone who strives to maintain some form of balance in your life, I think you're really going to enjoy that part of our conversation. Kendra shares some of her perspective on going into business with a spouse or a close friend or family member. And then lastly, we had some great conversation around the definition of failure. This is one that I seem to come back to with multiple guests now because it's a word that I think is often misrepresented and misunderstood. And after listening to this conversation, I encourage you to think about your own definition of failure. And what does it mean to you? How do you define it? And how might your definition be different than how we tend to define failure as a society? My friend, I think you are really going to enjoy this conversation that I had with Kendra. I hope that you do. Stick around to the end as I'm going to share this week's question of the week, which you can answer by following me on Instagram at Chad M. Miles or following the show at A Level Deeper. I encourage you to join the discussion, leave a comment, engage with other listeners. And here's my conversation with Kendra Neal.
I've been listening to your podcast and it's really good. So congrats on that. I think it's really good. I listen to a lot of podcasts, like every day I listen to a podcast. So, especially podcasts like yours, actually, like kind of mindset based or like business based, entrepreneurship based. That's mostly all I listen to. And your podcast is right along with that. And I think you're doing excellent. So I just wanted to tell you that. It made me even more excited to be a guest.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I'm curious about why podcasts and why that category? Like what is it that draws you to a certain show? What are you hoping to listen to gain? What is it that draws you to podcasts?
Personally, I mean, I hear so many different things about podcasts. Like I have clients who listen to literally like things about pop reality or, things like that, or true crime. But for me, as a business owner and entrepreneur, really the main draw for me is to hear other stories similar to mine, because my path that I've chosen for my career is, it's not the norm, you could say. And there's not a lot of people that I even know running a business, let alone like running one in 2 states or just doing something outside the box. And so I love listening to podcasts, especially business podcasts or entrepreneurship podcasts, because it's so inspiring to me. And it helps me to realize like, okay, I'm not the only one in my position. I don't have all the answers as an entrepreneur. Actually, like as an entrepreneur, we're always figuring out the next step. And so listening to other people going through that process and hearing their startup journeys versus now their success and their failures along the way, it's just super encouraging. And it honestly keeps me on track, focused hard on my goals. So that's the main thing. Also, I've learned a ton from other business owners and other podcasters and mindset coaches. Like I've just learned so much valuable information that is free. You can literally listen to it on Spotify when people are paying like $50,000 to be a part of like mindset groups through Facebook to like get some of these answers. You know what I mean?
I've always had the belief that if you're willing to just put a little bit of effort into finding some of that information, like if you're willing to go do a little bit of searching on YouTube, if you're willing to invest some time into podcasts, there is so much information out there that is free that, like you said, people pay tens of thousands of dollars for. But if you just put in, it doesn't really take that much effort. But I don't know. It's interesting, but I find people, maybe because it does take effort in some way in the first place, it's like people just want someone to hand them the answers. In some ways, you've got to go seek and find them, right?
Definitely. There's a quote that it comes to mind as we're talking about this. I can't exactly get it right, but basically like inspiration finds you working. People are like, oh, I want to do something. Like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. It's like, well, what are you doing in the moment to try to get to the next step? Because you got to get the ball rolling. Maybe it's in the wrong direction, but you're going to feel that wrong direction. And then you're going to shift into a different like category, but you at least have to start. And you don't have all the money in the world. Like, that's okay. No good business does in the beginning. Like, everyone starts broke. So just start, learn from YouTube. I mean, honestly, that's how I got started, honestly, is YouTube. So you can start anywhere.
Yeah, walk us back, because to give people a little bit of context here, my wife, Eileen, and I grew up in the town of Brighton, Michigan, and Kendra also grew up in that town. So my wife, Eileen, and Kendra went to high school together.
That's right.
And as we knew that this conversation was coming, I think it was yesterday, Eileen and I were just talking about, we remember back, in high school when prom was coming around or homecoming was coming around, and Eileen was like, that was a time when everyone was like, we got to get booked with Kendra. She's going to paint our nails. This goes all the way back to high school. And so let's start there. I mean, walk us back in that part of your story to where some of this began. You use the words, I've taken a different path in life. Was that something that happened sort of intentionally, or did it just kind of end up that way? Tell us how this path started.
Yeah. I think like going way back, all the way back, when I first was in elementary school, I think that's really where I can look back and be like, okay, I was kind of different from the beginning. I was held back in first grade. The teachers came to my parents and they're like, she's smart in a lot of ways, but she just can't seem to grasp the task at hand with reading or math. And she's like, she draws and writes in her journal the whole class. And I'm like, yeah, so I was held back that year. And then I nearly failed every grade in elementary school until middle school. And then middle school, I like kind of started to wake up out of my like world I was living in. But I feel like I didn't intentionally take a different path. I think I've always, like, my personality type is positioned to be an artist entrepreneur. And I feel really grateful and thankful for my parents, because in high school, when that really started to come out for me, they kind of accepted that. And not only did they accept that I was probably not going to go to college like the rest of my class was, but they encouraged me in that craft, which I can't say that for a lot of artists, entrepreneurs, you know. I definitely felt pressured by just the general public for not going to college was a big, huge step. But in high school, I just was super into what I was into, which was art and the beauty industry. And that led me to like start doing my friends' hair, nails, makeup in high school. And then my dad was like, hey, we bought all this stuff for you to do this on like a professional level. He's like, you better start, you know, charging these people because you're doing this every day after high school. And so that's kind of where it began. I started charging like $8 for a manicure, which is nothing. And, but that got the ball rolling. And then I was like, a client would be like, or a friend client would be like, can you do this? I'm like, well, I don't really know how to do that, but I'll YouTube it. And so then I started learning on YouTube, like all these beauty techniques. And then we were just doing all the beauty trends in high school. So that's honestly how it started. I have always been creative, always been like in step with everyone, but I feel out of step in a sense as well. And I think other people could probably see that, but now it just feels like my calling and my purpose. I feel like I was always supposed to be an artist entrepreneur, and thank God I had the support, but also the courage to like pursue it full time after high school.
Yeah. How much of that would you chalk up to support versus courage? You know, I'm thinking of someone who might be listening to this conversation. Let's say someone's sitting in their car and they're like, you know, I hear what you're saying, Kendra. And like, I have this pull that I want to become an artist or an entrepreneur, but I don't know, my environment or my parents are very much like, no, that we're taking the more traditional route. Or if someone doesn't have that support system, I don't know, how much was it the support and how much was it some of that just internal courage to be willing to do something different?
I definitely was well supported by my parents. I mean, they were not pushing me to college at all. I had some scholarship to actually go to college, but ultimately what was the deciding factor was for me was internally, I just knew. I just knew that I had like a path and a vision that I really wanted to take. And even though culture and a lot of people were like, this is the safe and secure route, I didn't feel happy or excited about that at all. I actually felt the opposite. I felt dread. And so I feel like if you're an artist or an entrepreneur right now and you don't have support, you honestly need to like look internally, like what are your true pulls? Like what pulls you? Because you can do both. I know artists and entrepreneurs that have gone to college, and I know people who have to get through some hard things that they have to go through for whatever reason, whether it's your parents or maybe it's yourself. Maybe you know, like, no, I need to get this. I need to go to college, even though I feel like I could be an entrepreneur, like whatever it is, I think you can still do both. I would still be an artist entrepreneur if I had gone to college, but I didn't. And I feel like it furthered my career because I got started right away. Either way, if the odds are against you and your parents are like, no, you're going to college, then fine if you decide to go, but show them still. If that's in you, then do it anyways. Like, do both. Which is a lot, but like entrepreneurship is a lot. So it's good practice. Like show everyone around you what you're going to do, because everybody in the beginning will second guess you and question you. And still today, you know, people still kind of like, not that much anymore, but still people are like, oh, so what do you like, how exactly do you make money? You know, like, you don't have to prove yourself to anyone, but get started and they will see in the long run. They will see. If it's really in you to do it, you'll do it.
I love that message. You know, I think that's been some of my experience as well, is that in order to have, if people don't, immediately believe in the route that you want to take or what you want to do that's different. Well, the reason or the way that they come to believe is that they just see you do it. And sometimes they have to see you do it for a very long time in order to be like, oh, okay, now I kind of get it. Like, not everyone's brains think the same way of saying like, oh yeah, of course you want to see the world differently. Like, of course you want to go live in a van. That makes so much sense to me. What a logical decision. You know, people are like, what? This doesn't make any sense. I can resonate with that because my experience has been, okay, now I'm living this lifestyle for 2 years and like, we're making it work. And look at, I still earn an income. I still work. I still have a career. You know, I'm not just like living this life where I've abandoned all reality. Has it been a difficult journey for you to just manage some of maybe people's opinions on what you're doing or their thoughts, or maybe not having some of that belief at times?
Yeah, I would say that's always there to an extent, especially showing up as a creator on social media. You know, like sometimes there's always a little voice in the back of my head before I hit that post button or publish button that like, hopefully this doesn't come off as to fill in the blank, right? Hopefully my extended family doesn't think this of me or whatever. But ultimately other people's opinions of you are not paying your bills, which that's a very frank way to put it, that you shouldn't let people's like opinions of you decide what you're going to do in your career, because you're the one who has to live with yourself. And you can, if you really look within and concentrate on like what pulls you, what are your passions, that's going to be your life, not anyone else's opinion. And so you really have to stay true to yourself and find that inner voice and follow it, regardless of what people think, because a lot of people have thought a lot of things about my path and my career. And ultimately, like, thank God that I didn't let their opinions sway me, because I wouldn't be living my potential, in my true potential, which I believe I'm in now impacting others, having a team and employees. Like, I would not have any of this if I had listened to what I thought the majority of people were telling me to do.
Hey, if you've been enjoying these conversations, I've got a request for you. In the description of this episode is a link to a site called Buy Me a Coffee. And if you follow that link, you can, well, buy me a coffee. You could buy me a coffee to support late night editing or early morning recordings and all of the work that goes behind the scenes to create this show. Consider it like a digital tip jar and a way for you to leave a one-time donation to the show to help support me and help support meaningful conversations like this. Anyway, if you head to that link to check it out and make a small donation, I would really appreciate that, and it helps keep this show going and cover the costs associated with producing it on a weekly basis. Your support means the world to me, so thank you very much in advance. Okay, back to the show. Is what you've built, was this the vision that you had? You know, when you were in high school and you were talking about, okay, there's the route of going to college, and you felt like you had a different vision for what you wanted to create. Is it what you have created now, or was it different?
I don't think that I knew then what I would have now. Actually, I can guarantee you I did not know like what exactly it was that I wanted, but I knew that I did not want to go to college and study a subject. You know, art school was an idea, and I even considered going to art school, but even then I still felt like this, no, I just really want to go to beauty school and kind of like see this through a little bit, because I had started that in high school with all the beauty services, and I didn't know where it was going to take me. And money was not my priority either. Like, people go to college to get good jobs. Well, what even is a good job? Like, what is the definition of a good job? Because in my opinion then, as a 17-year-old, a good job was something that I could do every day and feel purpose and passion in, which for me is art, in the beauty industry, which lets me connect with others, which I love to do. I love people. I think people are really important, and that's my outlet, and I can't fathom doing anything else. So whether I made $40,000 or less, which is a typical salary when you're first starting in the beauty industry, or more, like, I was really satisfied with that prospect of just being happy on a daily level. So I don't think I I did not imagine that. Actually, I remember thinking when I was working in a salon, I don't think I would ever want to do like run a business like this and be in charge of all these people and be responsible for them. Like that prospect actually, like I did not want that then, but here we are now, and I run 2 teams in 2 different states, and I absolutely love it. It's my passion now. I've definitely grown along the way in my calling and in my craft. So that's why I think it's so important to follow your passions. And if you're true in that following of your passion, it will lead you to success.
Okay, for people listening, paint a little bit of a clearer picture of what your business is and what it does look like right now, as far as team members, locations, things like that.
Okay, yeah. So my business is called Kendra Neal Studio. And we are in 2 states. We're in Brighton, Michigan and Augusta, Georgia. We specialize in permanent makeup. So what is permanent makeup? It is essentially cosmetic tattooing. And we specialize in cosmetic tattooing of the eyebrows and also the lips. So we do eyebrow enhancements and lip blush. The tattoo lasts like 2 to 4 years. And we see men and women of all ages from all over the U.S. They come to see us at one of our 2 locations. And we have a team of 8 people between the 2 locations. And I've had a team for 3 years now. And I've been 5 years in business total. So that is what our business looks like. And it's pretty cool. We get to make an amazing impact on people. People lose their eyebrows from like cancer, alopecia. We see alopecia quite a bit. Trichotillomania, which is a hair pulling disorder. But outside of the health conditions and disorders that would lead you to lose your eyebrow hair, there's just an insecurity factor. Like a lot of women wake up every day and fill in their eyebrows. I've had women tell me they can't even look at themselves in the mirror until they like fill in their brows or show themselves to their husbands. Like these are real stories that I've heard from our clients. And so that is the problem we get to solve every day. And it's really fun and beautiful. And we get to be better artists and artists together. So we take students as well from all over the country at our 2 locations. So yeah, between our students and our clients, we stay pretty busy.
Okay, so I have a million questions and places that we could go from here, but I want to go back to, I think that's helpful for people to understand. You know, I've gotten to see you grow this business over the last 5 years. I think this is helpful for the listener to understand what it looks like at the moment. So
yeah.
This is where I put on my fellow entrepreneur business owner hat on, and I'm just curious about like, how did you make some of these decisions? You said you didn't want to, you didn't want to manage people. You didn't want to have a team. So what happened along the way to make you change your mind on some of these things and maybe change path a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So I started doing brows. I had always been in the beauty industry. As you know, I was mostly doing nails in high school. And then after high school, I worked in a really nice high-end day spa in Brighton, Michigan, pivoted into brows. And then I spent about 2 years just focusing on permanent makeup, microblading, powder brows. And by the end of that 2 years, I had built a wait list for my services, which was over a year-long wait list. So, I mean, there was so many people on that wait list. My husband, I started asking him for some help on like how to manage some software things that I was having issues with because I'm an artist. We're not naturally inclined to be good at that all the time. And he started helping me, and he was like, well, Kendra, you're never going to be able to see all these clients unless somebody starts helping you. And I'm like, well, I guess we're just going to have to figure out how to tell these clients that. And he was like, no, I think you should hire an assistant and then train them, and then they can help you take this client load on. And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. And he basically was the voice that was like, no, I think you can do this. You're talented and you love your clients. I think you would love having someone with you every day. I'm like, well, it's going to take the right person. So then I was like, okay, whatever. We'll put out a call to hire. And we got like over 20 applicants when I posted that I was going to hire an apprentice, and I ended up having 2 amazing candidates that just felt like in alignment with my values and our personalities. And so I hired them, and they have been with me ever since. And they have helped me kind of grow a team to fit our demand. So really it was out of like, we needed to fulfill the demand, and it pushed me into growth. And I was scared. I'm still scared sometimes, but that's how. And then now I am so thankful that I did that, because it's actually become my favorite part of my career is my team. And that's the very thing that I was scared of doing. And that is my favorite part. I tell them all the time, and I tell everyone. And if you were to talk to them, I think they would tell you that as well.
I guess it gives me hope. I am currently the person who fears hiring people and who fears growing a team. And it just feels a little bit easier when it's just me and I can control everything, and it's very predictable. So yeah, I'm you, and I need maybe I need Shane to also come tell me like, hey, go hire someone.
Yeah. You need a Shane. Well, I mean, as a business owner in any field, at some point, if you're good at what you do and you love it, you're going to hit a point where you can do no more. You've hit your max. There's no more, like, you can only take this many clients. You can only record this many shows. Like, you can only do so much as one individual without losing yourself. And I had hit that point in my career, and it was time to either be like, okay, I'm okay with this, or do you want more? Because if you do want more, and if you're curious of your potential, then it's time to take action and start building the next level of business. And then you'll hit a block there, and then it will be time to build the next level of business. And it's scary and it's hard, but I mean, it's really rewarding. So I say you should do it. You should hire. Yes, it will be hard, and there'll be a lot of lessons to learn, but it'll be so worth it in the end, I think. It has been for me.
What is, you mentioned, it's either you reach your capacity. So it's either you're going to hire people that are going to help you, or you risk losing yourself. What does losing yourself mean or look like? Did you experience that side of things before you opened yourself up to finding help?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say even now it's hard to create balance in your life. I don't fully know if there is such a thing as balance. I strive for it, but it's tricky. But then I was taking clients 6 days a week, like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I think part of it is my personality type. I've always been kind of a workhorse, because I love the craft and because I love the client. And I feel like if people are texting me, I should accept, you know what I mean? So I've had to learn like what a good life balance looks like, what I can take on in a day, and where I should say no. I've had to learn how to say no, and that's been hard for me along the way. But yeah, my health had struggled a little bit. I think working so much and then taking on stress, even though it's good stress, your body still recognizes good stress, bad stress, whatever, as like, I need a break. And so like high cortisol levels, which is your stress hormone, starts to affect the rest of your body. And I've definitely experienced that over the course of my build of my business. And I'm still striving for balance. I definitely am not perfect when it comes to that. I'm not the poster child for a good life balance, but I have not had children yet. And I think that I'm like, okay, I don't have kids yet. I just need to grind. But I do need to find some balance for my own health. And I'm really working on that this year.
So what does that process look like? I guess the first question would be, how do you define balance? What would balance look like to you?
I think balance for me is, being able to do all the things that I absolutely have to do as the business owner and leader of my company. So getting all of my requirements done and still having time for inspiration, which for me to be inspired as an artist, I really need to be like having some time alone and maybe out in nature, just time to kind of reflect and feel what I want next, and be able to even have moments to be passionate and excited, where I definitely lost that along the way because I was just truly, honestly, just grinding 9 to 9. And even though I loved it, you lose that quiet space. So definitely time to reflect and have, inspirational moments, time with my husband. We've been married 6 years. We're 28 and 29. And so like one-on-one time with him where we're not talking about the business, and time to build community. I think I've realized that is really important, which I haven't done as much. I've built a business and I know a lot of people and I have a ton of clients, and I have colleagues, but like a personal community where I live, that would be included in my balance. And then time for fitness and faith. So I'm involved in my church. I want to be more involved in my church. And I want to be like physically strong, because I believe that if you keep your temple healthy and strong, then, you're going to minimize your risk of health conditions down the road. You'll be able to live your best life. So all of those things have struggled along the way in order for me to kind of get to where I've been in my career. But I'm trying to make time where all of those categories have a nice, not a fully even balance, because you have to work a lot, but much more balanced than they have been in the past 4 years, I would say. So that would be a well-rounded life, time for those things.
Makes me think of the word sacrifice. I'm a believer in that whatever choices that we make in life, we have to sacrifice something. So
definitely,
it sounds like for you, maybe at times that has been sacrificing some of, whether it's community or some of relationships or maybe some of your personal time in order to invest that time into your business. If you flip it and you start investing more into some of those things, could you have to sacrifice some parts of your business? Maybe not from like a growth standpoint, but some of your involvement in it or some of your responsibility in the business. Like, as you sit here now, what do you think it will take in order to reach this balance that you're looking for? Like, what is the next thing that you might have to sacrifice if you believe, or if we share a belief that you can't necessarily have it all the time?
Right. Well, I think, right now, I'm actually in the process of creating like the next 3-year vision and what that looks like for the business. And I definitely think in order to free up some more time in my personal life, I'm looking at like maybe either hiring for a new position to take on some of the things I'm still in charge of, or delegate some of those things off if I can to current employees. Really, like I still want to be doing the things that I'm the absolute best at and that propel the company forward. But the things that maybe I'm not the best at, or maybe my company really doesn't need me to be doing those things, somebody else could do it. I'm kind of learning like what I can give away at this point now that I'm 5 years in, and I'm like, I've had a death grip on it. Now I'm like, okay, wait. Okay, now I'm going to let you do that part now, which I have a lot because we have a studio coordinator now. The last 7 months, she's been a tremendous help, Hannah. And my husband, Shane, he's joined me in business full time for the last 1.5 years, almost 2 years now. He's been a huge help. So I'm slowly getting to that point. I'm slowly getting there. But yeah, learning to give some tasks away and really focusing in on like what you absolutely need to do to keep your company steady and moving forward. And I'm learning those things.
How do you feel about, so if you felt like you've had to sacrifice some things in order for your career to be and for your business to be where it is, as you look at some of those sacrifices that you've had to make, and you're talking about this process of maybe trying to find a different form of balance in your life, what's your perspective on making those sacrifices that you've made to this point? Like, do you look at them and do you say, you know what, I'm really okay with the sacrifices that I made. They've been worth it. I don't know. What's your relationship with looking back on some of these things that you have sacrificed?
I would say this is so crazy bringing this up. We were just talking about this actually this past weekend. I would say that if I could do everything over again, I would do it exactly how I did it. I did sacrifice a lot along the way, but in a way, it was the perfect time in my life to sacrifice like friends and communication with loved ones and having a social life that a normal 20-year-old would have. Like, I definitely sacrificed that. And I would do it again because I am so thankful and grateful for what I have now. And you're only in that startup phase once. And I do think that you have to kind of go all out in order to get something up and running. Especially if you're trying to do it within like the first few, like 3 to 5 years, I would do it again. However, I think if my circumstances were different, it would have been different. But I was, 24 and I had just moved to a new state. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends. Nobody knew me. So it's not like I was saying no to people. Like, no one was coming anyways. No one was calling me. I had just moved from Michigan to Georgia. Like, I wasn't going to fly home. You know what I mean? I was in the perfect spot. I don't have children. My husband was active duty military when I started. So he was gone, like, overseas. So it was kind of the best opportunity. And I didn't realize then that it would take a toll on my health as it has a little bit. I didn't know that then. And I didn't understand balance then because I was young. And yeah, so I would say I'm really happy how it happened, but going forward, I definitely am going to have some structure, guidelines, goals for myself personally in check because I feel that I need that now. I feel a shift in the last probably a little like year and a half. I felt that shift. So I'm leaning into that and I'm trying to listen to my body and get on the right track.
Can you tell us more about what that shift has looked like or felt like? What is the shift?
So not working 6 days a week, 9 to 9. I no longer work in the studio with clients and students and apprentices 9 to 9. So I've been able to kind of delegate some of those tasks when it comes to students and when it comes to like new employees. I have a set schedule. Like, I don't take clients past this time on these types of days because I still work as an artist in the business as well. So just setting some guidelines and sticking to it has been huge for me. And I actually am this month starts a new calendar where I even have more time available to just focus on being an admin, a leader, having some like downtime just all to myself where I can think and kind of plan. That all starts for me this month actually, which is exciting and kind of scary because when you're in such a habit and a routine of work, it can feel scary to not do that because your brain is having to get used to like a new cycle of living. And it's like, okay, wait, are we okay here? Is the ship gonna sink if I don't do what I've always done? Because what I've done is good because it has gotten us to where we're at. And so now I have to pivot a little bit and still get us to where we need to go, but I can't burn myself out along the way anymore. And that's apparent to me and my family, my husband. So.
Well, I think it highlights the reality that especially if you are leading people and you have a team, if you, the leader, if you can't show up as your best self, if you can't show up as, with some level of clarity and with some energy and with a positive attitude, and if it gets to a point where you can't show up that way, then I think it becomes more difficult for the people that are around you and the people that you're leading to show up in that way as well. It's like, I think
that's so true.
We reflect a lot of the energy and just, disposition of who our leader is. And so I think you're potentially doing the rest of the team a disservice if you're pushing yourself beyond your own boundaries and limits so that you can't show up your best.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so true. Honestly, that's so good. And I want to be an example of like a well-rounded life and like having a purpose-driven life, I had to do what I've done to get to where we are at. But now that we have this amazing thing, I want to nurture it and grow it to the best of my ability and be the best I can for it and my community that I take care of, essentially.
I also think about the word balance. I was having a conversation with a friend at one point and we were talking about, the idea of balance. And it's like, First of all, I don't know if I fully believe in the idea of balance. I don't know if true balance really exists. I tend to think of it, or I
Yeah.
like when people use like the word rhythm and finding more of a rhythm that works for you in your life.
Right.
And as I think about a word like balance or rhythm, well, isn't the only way that you really find balance or find some sort of rhythm is by getting out of balance and getting out of rhythm? And it's like, in some ways, how can you know
Yeah.
what balance is or what balance feels like for you in your life if you haven't been out of balance, if you haven't gone
Exactly.
to the extremes to figure out what that is like? And then it's like, oh, okay, this is when I'm too much. This is
Yeah.
when I'm burnt out. This is when I'm pushing
At
too
my
hard.
limit.
All right, well, now I at least have a frame of reference that I can dial back
Mm.
from a little bit. And then maybe you dial too far back, and then you figure out the other end of the balance.
So
And
good.
that, in
So
the
good.
end, you kind of create this pendulum. And I guess that could result as
Right.
balance. But I think you have to explore the extremes in order to figure out where you want to land within them.
Oh gosh, that's so good. That is so good. And I think that's right. I think you do have to experience extremes in life in order to know, just like kind of how I said earlier, like you have to kind of just get the ball rolling. If it's in the wrong direction, you'll feel that and then kind of move. But that's really true. And I definitely have experienced burnout and fatigue. And I've realized along the way, like, okay, wait, maybe I need to change it up a little bit to be my best self ultimately, which would be balance for me. But balance is tricky because like maybe you give a lot in this area. Well, you only have so much to give. So you don't have unlimited resources within yourself. Like you do in a sense, but you need rest. And, yeah, that's definitely been a struggle as an entrepreneur, like my whole life. But, I'm feeling like I'm on the right path finally.
Okay, so I'm curious about the decision to work with your husband Shane, and for selfishly, I also work
Yeah.
with my wife Eileen, and I want to learn more about that. But as I
Yeah.
think about the listener
So
as
cool.
well, if it's someone who maybe is an entrepreneur and is thinking about working with their spouse or significant other, or even someone who wants to go into
Mm-hmm.
business with a friend, you hear all these sayings about never work with family, never work with your friends, never, 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 blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tell us a little bit about what that experience has been like working with your husband Shane, and is there any wisdom that you could share, or just what is your perspective on working with some of your family or working with friends or people close to you?
Yeah, for sure. I think I think it's really complex topic and it's too hard to say like a blanket statement. You should work with your spouse or you shouldn't work with your spouse or you should open up a business with your family. You shouldn't like, it's so tricky because I've seen it be done so well with other friends that run businesses with partners or whatever. And I've seen it the opposite where it is so toxic and tragic in the end. So I think it, it's dependent upon what you're doing and what your both parties' goals are in that endeavor. Like, what are your goals? And like being really honest about what your goals are, your end goals, and kind of laying everything out on the table in the beginning before you go into business. Like, hey, if all of this goes sideways, like if this fails or the investment doesn't work, will we still be married and can we still love each other and be happy with each other? Or like, are we going to let the failure break us apart? I think that's a good conversation to have before even getting started. Like, don't go into it like, oh, we're good. Like, we're never gonna, nothing could ever rip us apart because honestly, money is like the one thing people get divorced over the most. And that being said for families or actual spouses, but like get all of the bad stuff on the table and be like, this is my biggest fear working together. If this happens, can we get through it? If the answer is yes, then I think it's worth a shot. But if it's, oh yeah, you're right, that is like really scary. And like if there's hesitancy there, it's not time yet. And so I think your goals need to be aligned, what you want to get out of it. It needs to make sense for everyone. It needs to make sense. Like spiritually, physically, financially. And then you have to get, you have to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. Like, everything on the table. Can we get through the hardest parts of this? And if that is a yes, then I would say go into business with each other. I kind of have been in a family business like my whole life. My dad is a pastor of a church, and we've always like the whole family, it's been a family endeavor. And so growing up, kind of seeing that along the way, yeah, there's definitely hardships. And I think honestly, just having good open communication in relationships is going to be number one. Like, when you don't agree, you have to talk about it, and you have to like get through that issue. There's no passive aggressive. It's very direct. We got to figure this out because it's everyone's life on the line, so to speak. But my husband and I going to business together, it really only made sense, which is why we ended up doing it. He was just getting out of the military. I was expanding. I had just hired and trained my first 2 employees. And it was either follow his career, which was going to move us to, at the time, he had a job offer in Utah. And he was like, I either take this job or I stay here and we can stay in Augusta and like keep doing KNS, which is short for our Kendra Neal Studio business. And I'm like, well, I think we're gonna have to think about this, pray about it, and talk about it, because we have to come to a decision where we're both like 100% supportive of the other. And so I was open to whatever. If that's what he felt like was his calling and our calling for us as a couple, then I was open to doing that. But he came back to me and he said, I don't feel as excited about this job as I feel excited for what we have going on in KNS. And I think that I am going to turn this job offer down and help you for 6 months, and we'll reevaluate after 6 months and see how it's going. And I'll never forget, he told me, we came to Georgia for me, but we're staying for you. And that was just like a life-changing moment for me as a woman in business, especially because, I'm not going to lie, I got married expecting to follow my husband in his career around the country or out of the country, wherever the military was going to take us. Like, I was fully surrendered to that because I love him and I want to make a life with him, and so it's hard if 2 people have these strong careers. I think you can both do it. There's a game that you have to play there to make it work. And in that moment, he chose me in KNS. And since then, he's helped me reach heights that I could have never reached on my own, because his skill set is so opposite of my skill set. And so that first year in business was a little tricky. We had to figure out what are you in charge of? What am I in charge of? And do we feel okay? Like, is that the most smart? Like, you got to take your ego out of things. If you're going to work with your spouse, you have to take your ego out. And, yeah, so, we would fight about stuff, but ultimately, like, I think just overall in our relationship, business, personal, whatever, like, we never let a fight go unresolved longer than 24 hours. Like, usually we're resolving it into the wee hours of the night. Like, we do not fall asleep until we're like, okay, I forgive you. Like, I love you. Good night. Like, we kind of apply that same strategy to everything we do in our life, in our business. And I think that's like the key. And then just entrusting each other. And we've made decisions together as a couple where one of us felt more strongly about a decision. We do it and it fails. And we've lost, an investment somehow. But like I said, before every risk that we really take together, we evaluate that risk and if this thing that we're trying to do goes sideways, like, is it okay if we lose X amount of effort and money that we put into it? Like, will we be okay? Or are we going to be mad? If yes, then let's do it. And we take more of those risks and we win than the opposite. And I'm thankful for that. But we have felt the burn of wrong choices as a couple and a business owner. And that's okay. That is part of the journey.
To me, it highlights the importance of some self-reflection and self-awareness. You can have some of these conversations with your spouse, with a family member, with a friend, and say, are we going to be okay if things don't go as planned? If things go wrong, are we going to be okay? It's one thing to just kind of have that conversation. It's another thing to really have the self-awareness to be able to say, will it be okay?
Yeah.
Will I be able to forgive someone? Will I be able to accept if things don't go the way that they would be? I feel like those self-awareness and self-reflection are kind of they're very important ingredients into being able to manage conversations like that and kind of keep yourself in check. And it's like, well, will I be okay with that? Is that going to be all right with me?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it keeps a healthy perspective on the steps you're taking in your life. Like, honestly, not just in business, with anything. What are the positives and what might be the downside of this choice? Does your idea of what's positive out of this get you more excited? Like, do you think that you can see this through? If so, and if you're okay with the risk, then you should do it. I think more people should take risks. I think a lot of people don't take enough risks. And I feel like lack of risk taking leads to living like somewhat mediocre life. And I think if people just took a little more risk and just kind of went for it and failed, and then maybe went for the next thing and score, like, that is so beautiful, is that we can try again. And failure is not the end. It's just a redirection.
Why is it that you think people don't take more risk?
I think it's very easy to live a safe life. I think it's easier to not take risks than to take risks, because in the moment, whether you're buying a house or just anything that you have to kind of take a risk and invest in and be committed to, that is risky because that involves commitment. It's like, do I want to put myself in a position where I have to keep doing that? Am I going to be happy long term? Like, it's easier to be like, maybe not right now, or let's revisit that, because it's scary because you might fail. And failure in our society is like looked down upon. I mean, I think that's changing for sure in the last couple of years, for sure. I think that's starting to change, that outlook of failure. But ultimately, nobody wants to fail. And I think fear of failure and fear of other people's opinions keep people living a mediocre life, ultimately.
How do you define failure?
That's a good question. I think failure could be defined in so many ways, but ultimately, looking back on areas of my life where I feel like maybe we're a failure, like maybe investing in something and then the margins got cut and we were out all of the money of our initial investment. That could be defined as failure. So losing a financial return, a relationship going sideways could be seen as a failure. Maybe a loss of an employee could seem like a failure, but I don't believe in failure, really. I think that all of those things that I've experienced along the way have built me into the person that I am and given me the mindset that I have now, because I have taken a risk and I have lost a few times. And I mean, thank God I did, because when you lose a little bit, it kind of affects you in a way where when you go to take another risk, you're kind of mentally checking off boxes before you accept that risk, whether it's a new employee, a new investment for your business, maybe you're buying a house, something like that. You're going to have a little bit more well-rounded perspective because you have experience, because you've been burned, so to speak. I mean, maybe, failure is good.
Right. So then it's like, are those things really failures at all? I
don't think so.
My therapist posed that question to me a couple of years ago of well, how do you define failure? And as I started thinking about how I define it, and I started thinking about the more traditional ways that people define failure, essentially people usually define it as well, you just didn't get the outcome that you wanted to get out of a situation. And as I thought about that, I'm like, well, I don't really think that's failure at all, because I can name 10 different things where I've made decisions. I didn't get the outcome that I was planning on, but I got something else from the situation that made it very much not a failure. So I guess as I'm thinking about the person who, if you are listening to this conversation, maybe you need to revisit what your definition of failure is. If you think that you're afraid of taking these risks that we're talking about because you're afraid to fail, well, what does failure mean?
Yeah.
in maybe taking a risk in something not going the way that you thought, maybe that's not really the worst thing.
So true.
Have you had examples of things not going the way that you thought that they would go, and them ultimately working out to be positive, or working out to get you further along than you thought you might have?
Yeah, definitely. So probably I would say the best example would be maybe hiring for a certain job. It didn't really work out for that individual. You know, one individual comes in, I have expectations, she has expectations. Said expectations were unknown at the time to both of us because it was a new endeavor. Along the way, we figure out both of our expectations. We end up parting, so she no longer works with KNS. However, she is going to find a place that meets her expectations and that helps her in her future career. And I now have a beautiful perspective on what supports the business for that role and the exact things that we need. And I figured out all of those things because I've tried it, and it quote unquote failed with that one person, but it wasn't really failure for either of us. It was just a redirection and kind of like a huge growing season. So what one would call failure, some people might say, oh, it failed with that. Like, she didn't go over well between them or whatever. Like, it's not a failure because first off, our relationship is still beautiful and intact. And now we both have experience in this role. And now she knows what she needs and I know what I need. And so that would be a recent example, and probably the best, most relatable, I would say, for an employer.
It's a great example. I mean, I appreciate you being willing to share. And I often think about the idea of just kind of zooming out from these moments where, like, in that moment, it is, I imagine, very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, of course, you were both hoping for a different outcome in that situation.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But if we zoom out, and, we fast forward 5 years down the road, like, that thing happening, which felt very difficult at the time, that might have led her towards a different path that could have, taken her to new heights than she was going to reach with you at KNS, not as a reflection of you, but, maybe it sends her down a different path that just, it wouldn't have happened in the same way if it was going to happen the way that you were both planning on. And so I just think about that idea of zooming out sometimes a little bit and seeing that, maybe down the line, this thing could be okay. Maybe down the line, this all works out for a reason. And we just don't know that answer right now in this moment.
No. You have to learn. Like, you have to walk the steps. Like, even if you were to hire a business coach and they were to give you all the answers, they're giving you the answers off their experience, which is good and valuable. But you're the one that actually has to make the decisions. And you're the one that has to feel the weight of that decision, whether it's a positive outcome or a negative outcome. You have to feel that, because that's going to help you make new decisions going forward that will, be purposeful and add value. So failures are just learning experiences and redirections. And even though it feels like it might hurt, and it does hurt in the moment, it does hurt. But that's such a human experience that we all have to go through, is feeling the pain of something, because when you get it right, you're going to feel the happiness and the joy, and the success of your next decisions.
I wish it weren't the case, but I completely agree with you. It sounds so much better. It sounds so much nicer if we didn't have to go through these painful experiences to be able to learn things. But
definitely.
I just continue to find that nothing teaches like pain, like something not
like
going
experience.
And like experience. Yeah. It just continues to prove itself to be. It's really the only way that it's gonna hit home for you, and that you are going to internalize it and grow from it, is you have to go through the difficulty.
Oh, 100%. Someone could tell you, don't do that. Like, if you're in a fight with your spouse and someone says, don't do that, like, that has a bad outcome, you are like, whatever, I'm gonna do it how I'm gonna do it, and you're gonna feel that outcome. Like, if you have failed relationships, you need to, like, kind of go back, reflect on that, and see what could have been different so you can go forward in like better, healthy relationships. Like you can apply that to everything in life, I think, honestly.
And maybe that's the key to this whole kind of failure conversation that we're having, is an element of reflection. If something doesn't go the way that you wanted it to go, do you take that moment to hit pause and say, well, why? Why didn't it go the way I wanted it to go? And going back to some things we've talked about, what was my role in this not going the way that I wanted it to go? What can I learn? What can I do differently? So I think that reflection piece of this whole equation probably shouldn't be ignored.
Oh, definitely. And I think reflection is huge. And I'm even realizing that as I get older, which is natural, I'm really reflecting on this past year of business, what strategies worked well for us, what we didn't see growth in, and where we had to say goodbye to a couple relationships, and why, and what could I have done better as a boss? What could KNS have done differently? And ultimately I feel excited about this year and implementing some things and some change that I feel like I've learned along the way. So I think it's so important to take the ego out and look at yourself, and really look at yourself. It's painful. If you're married, then you understand that. But yeah, reflection is huge.
Okay, so this part of the conversation has been kind of on looking back. I am curious about some of your thoughts on, as you look forward, you talked about setting this 3-year vision. You don't have to tell us exactly what that 3-year vision is, but what is your relationship with looking forward, and what are you thinking about as you're making some of these decisions about the future? To give some context, like I think sometimes I find myself getting sort of caught or afraid of thinking about the future because of, you talked about, the word commitment. And it's like, well, if I say I'm going to do this and this is my kind of 3-year vision, well, what if I change my mind? What if I don't want to commit to that thing?
Right.
How do you think about the future? How do you think about this vision for what you want to create? What does that look like for you?
So I'm currently reading a book called The Vivid Vision. I don't know if you've heard it. But in 2020, I sat down with Shane, my husband, which he had started helping me a little bit in 2020. And I wrote out a vision of what I wanted KNS to look like. And I just was thinking about hiring some people. And I wrote down almost like a strategic, not a game plan. A vision is not a game plan. Like, we're going to do it this way and this is what we're going to execute. A vision is like, you can write your vision for either your personal life or your business. It should be on like a 1.5 to 2 pages long. And it should describe what your company looks like 3 years from now, as if it's already running that way. It's like manifestation, and you're putting it on paper. What does KNS smell like when the clients come in through the glass doors, the glass gold doors? It smells like eucalyptus and mint. They're greeted by a beautiful blonde Hannah who has Ferrero Rochers in her hand. Like, you're painting the real vision of what it feels like, sounds like, looks like, what it feels like to work in KNS as an employee, what it feels like to run KNS as an employer. That is what I'm kind of focused on for the next 3 years. And to be honest with you, our 2020 vision, if I read it to you today, everything I put on there, we've accomplished. We have seen students. We do take students from all over the US and train them in our powder brow technique. We have clients flying from Dallas. This was all on my vision. And it kind of, when you write down a vision like that and then you read it back to yourself, it makes it real to you because it's out of your head. And now you're like, wait, I do want that. And as you start to kind of put things in motion, maybe some things fall off and didn't really work out and was kind of a gray area. That's okay. Not everything is going to be black and white. And you might decide, no, that doesn't really work. And that's too expensive to try to do that. Or like the margins don't really work out for whatever it is that you decided. That's okay. But if you have like an overall vision, it's like you can show everybody who works with you, this is where we're going. And it gets everyone on the same page and excited about what you're doing. And everyone starts to talk a certain way, look a certain way, because you're in alignment on where you're going. And so I think a vision is super important. And so, but it's also super reflective, because I'm kind of mapping out, what do I want the next 3 years to look like for KNS? Where do I want to take this? I'm really happy with where we're at. How do I want it to be different? Maybe I don't exactly want it to be different. How am I going to continue to implement a good culture for my employees? Maybe we're going to take an additional trip this year. Maybe we're all going to do a training in Las Vegas together, whatever. Like, I'm putting that down, and then we're going to figure it out later. And in the book, it says you should have a big, hairy, audacious goal. It should scare you. And so I'm making sure I'm going to add in some things that make me a little uncomfortable, like X amount of leads per month or whatever. Like, okay, so then it puts the team in, how do we figure this out? And so I think you would surprise yourself if you wrote a vision for your business or your life, and then you posted it on your mirror, whatever. I think you would surprise yourself, and you will achieve what you set out to do, because I've seen that in my life for sure. So,
and it makes me think about, even if there's the internal component of it, and then as you talked about, like with your team, and whether you have a team, or I guess, I don't have a team at the moment, and it's important for the people around you, whoever those people are, to also understand, where are you going and where are you trying to get to, whether it's a spouse or your team or, your family or friends. Like, well, I guess I'm just thinking about, well, maybe if other people around me just understood where I'm trying to get to, then maybe they could help me get there in some way. And if I never give them the opportunity to say, well, this is where I'm going, then how could I ever expect employees, team members, family, friends, how could I really ever expect them to kind of contribute or pitch in if I've never defined where it is I'm trying to get to?
That is so true. That's so true. And not only that, like, it will either excite someone to hear your vision for your company or your life, or it will kind of like turn them off. And if you're running a business, you want that, because you're attracting a certain type of employee to work in your company who holds your core values. And if you have that type of person, you're going to further your vision and further your goals, because they're in alignment with what you're trying to do. And that's okay. It's like, KNS might not be for everyone, and that's okay, but we are for a lot of people. And those are the people that we're directly speaking to.
Okay. So, I had a couple of listener questions that were submitted. I think we've covered most of them in our conversation. There was one that was about maintaining good balance in life. I think we covered that one pretty well. My wife Eileen submitted a couple of questions that were about, kind of your message to entrepreneurs, which I feel like you shared. There was one that we haven't covered that maybe we can end here. This is from Instagram user Bella A. Largen. Maybe you're familiar with her.
Hi, Bella.
For context here, Bella is a fellow, she's also from Brighton and went to high school with Kendra and Eileen. Bella asks, how has working with women over the years shaped your view of beauty standards?
Oh, this is a good question. And it's funny, like, I work in the beauty industry, and I have worked in the beauty industry my entire career. And I think that to some people, that may seem like, being in the beauty industry may seem like a vain path, but I don't think that at all. I think that all of our clients, like, they're coming to feel empowered and beautiful. And no matter what a woman or a man, whatever they look like, we empower them to feel like their best self, whether it's like a simple brow wax. I mean, we do that. And, people love it. But I think that beauty has no shape or look. I mean, I think I feel my most beautiful when I'm staying true to myself, not like however my makeup is or my hair is. Like, I feel most empowered when I'm staying true in my alignment of my values. I've seen like trends along the way, of course. I mean, we are always moving with the beauty trends, and there's some trends I like and don't like, and some things that I don't think are flattering for people. But ultimately, like, our goal in the beauty industry is to make that individual feel beautiful in the moment. And a simple brow wax is not even about the brow wax. It's about like connecting with another person, like actually like having someone just like touch you and talk to you and like see through the like mundane of the day, like does so much for your confidence, much more than you could even really imagine. And there's always jokes about people in the beauty industry, how their hairstylist or nail tech is their therapist. And there is something about giving someone a service like that makes them feel better about themselves, but connecting on that such a real level. It's one of my favorite parts of my career, is to be able to connect. Honestly, just like me and you are connecting now, with a random person, whoever it is. I get to do this hundreds of times in my week, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is interesting. I haven't really thought about that, the connection point. And I also like how you bring it back to it's sort of a personal decision to why people seek out services from you and what it might bring to them. And it might bring something different to everyone, like you said, whether it's someone who has a health concern that has removed their eyebrows, or if it's just building some confidence or some empowerment. Everyone is coming for something different. And I guess it's not necessarily your place as a provider to judge or decide why people are coming, but hopefully you're bringing them something that they are looking for, something that they feel like they need in their lives.
Oh, that's so true. And I mean, there are people out there who are like, don't do anything to your looks. Like, who cares? You're beautiful the way you are. I mean, yes, but makeup is an art, and we're all artists. And like, I love being able to like transform myself for a certain type of look that I'm trying to achieve as an individual. And I think that is to be respected. You know, people want to look a lot of different ways for a lot of different reasons, and that's okay. Luckily, people want that because I get to be a professional artist and help them achieve whatever individuality they're searching for, you know, and I get to impact them in that moment, which is my most favorite part.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing some of your story. Like you, I mean, I value these opportunities to connect with fellow business owners, fellow entrepreneurs, and just kind of see, hey, how are you going about this whole process? And I hope for you, the listener, I hope hearing Kendra share some of her journey of how she's gone about this whole thing and embracing some of that unknown and embracing risk and failure and all of the things that come with this journey. I hope that brought you something as you're listening in your house or in your car. Kendra, thank you for being here with me. Thank you for sharing your story. If people wanted to connect with you or find more about KNS, where can they do that?
Definitely. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for having me, Chad. Thank you for having real, honest conversations. That was good. That was deep. I feel really happy that I got to share with everyone. You can find me on Instagram at kendra.neal, Neal.studio, or kendranealstudio.com. Our TikTok is Kendra Neal Studio as well, but we would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kendra.
Thank you so much. Bye.
You know, Kendra is not necessarily someone that I get to interact with directly that often, but over the last couple of years, with this podcast conversation, and Eileen and I met up with Kendra and Shane in Colorado a year or two ago as we were on the road. I really enjoy chatting with her. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as well. She has this energy, and some of the different things that she shared in this episode, some of the little one-liners really stood out to me. I found myself reflecting on some of my own life and some of my own choices, and especially as an entrepreneur, some of the journey that I'm on, and the whole conversation around setting a vision, and then ultimately her thoughts on starting to allow team members into her life and go from this one woman show to bringing in a team and bringing in other people. It just really spoke to me. That's been on my mind a lot lately, is trying to figure out, what is the next kind of stage for me, work-wise and business-wise. And that felt like she was speaking to me directly. So I really took that away from this conversation. And I'm curious what your thoughts were on sacrifices. That's one that I think about often, and the things that we have to sacrifice in order to get the things that we might want in life. And then it's interesting to stop or pause and look back on and think about, are the things that I've sacrificed worth it? How do I feel about the things that I have sacrificed in my life in order to get to where I'm at? And that is this week's question of the week. I want you to think about, and you can join the conversation on Instagram. My Instagram is @ChadMMiles. And I post the question of the week with the cover art for this episode. This week's question is, what sacrifices have you made in life? And what is your relationship to those sacrifices? I want you to take a moment to reflect on some of the sacrifices that you have made, and what do you think about them? Are you okay with them? Do you struggle with them? Do you wish you would have done things differently? I'm really curious what you think. From my perspective, as long as we're making really intentional sacrifices, I don't find myself regretting the things that I have sacrificed. Living in the van is a very unique lifestyle. And Eileen and I have had to sacrifice a lot in order to make this lifestyle work. And sometimes I definitely struggle with it, but I don't think I would change it. What are your thoughts on sacrifice? I would love to hear from you. Join the conversation on Instagram. If you enjoyed this podcast with Kendra, really the best thing you can do to help grow the show is to share it with someone. Is there someone in your life who you think would benefit from hearing this conversation? Send them a text, send them an email, tell them about it face to face. That'd be nice. And, go be curious. Go have a conversation with someone. Go ask someone about something about their life, and you never know what you might learn. I'll be with you again next week, and I'll see you then.